Okay, I found it. Okay. Anyway, I didn't want to miss out on that. So, but I appreciate everyone taking the time. City council members had the budget emailed out to them. For members of the public that have never experienced something like this, the budget is about 60 pages long. I don't know if you can see this, but it's a fairly good thick document with all of the information, and that's our operating totals for the year. So with that, we're going to go through department by department. We will start in, of course, the general fund revenue. We typically do not forecast a significant increase in revenue, but we do every year tweak the revenue up just a bit. We did forecast a very small increase for 2021. We're trying to be cautiously optimistic. The economy appears to be coming back strong, but of course we have no idea for certain where things will end up into next year, as there's a lot of talk just around shutdowns and other things. So we're of course being very cognizant and mindful of that fact. So if you would turn in your budgets, council members, to page 1 of 59 on the general fund side, it should start on 101 general fund, would be the page that we would start with. And that actually is your city council budget section. So I'll give you all a few minutes. You can just give me a thumbs up or a nod when you're there to make sure we're all on the same page. I know we've in the past, we've had very short conversations with the council president just to make sure that he's okay with things, but this is actually your budget section for city council and the council clerk. Are there any questions, comments, concerns with that? All right, then we will move on to the municipal court. The municipal court, as council knows, is the city municipal court. We are responsible for the operation of the Tiffin-Fostoria Municipal Court here at the city. However, they do cover municipal court cases throughout Seneca County. You know, I think that's one thing that a lot of the public doesn't realize is any municipal type cases actually go through this court. We're just required to basically be the host for it. So it's much larger jurisdiction than just the city of Tiffin or the city of Fostoria, as many individuals typically think it is, but we are still responsible for the budget and hosting the municipal court. Any questions or comments? Then we will move on to the Director of Law budget. It's gotten smaller, if you recall. Brent now is focused. We have a contract now with the county for prosecution. So right now, the law department budget is actually pretty darn straightforward. It's basically the law director, Brent Howard, and a few other ancillary items, but much easier than it has been in past years, a lot less employees. Any questions, comments, or anything that Brent would like to add? Mr. President, it does look like Ann Forrest is potentially logging in, so we may have, I'll continue to record the meeting just in case she's not able to hear or see to take her notes for the meeting. The next page is the Director of Human Resources, Deborah Reamer. She is here if there are any questions or comments with Human Resources budget. And department heads, if there is anything that you want to add at any point about your budgets, just click the raise hand function and we can bring you in. But I don't want to surprise anyone and bring you in here. And if you're eating dinner or you have kids that you're trying to babysit, we don't want to surprise bring you into the meeting. Any questions on human resources? Okay. We will move into next is the mayor's budget. That essentially is myself and Judy Ryder, who's our administrative assistant here at City Hall. Are there any questions on the mayoral budget lines? If I go too fast or anything, please let me know. I'll gladly slow down or go back to something. It's kind of strange not being able to see you all in the same room to make sure everybody's okay. So that's why I'm trying not to fly through here. Yeah, Ben, Councilman Gillig.
Could you tell me what page number you're on? I am kind of lost.
Sure. I know. It's much more difficult when we're not face to face. This would be page 6 of 59.
Okay.
It would say at the top left, the first like budget line you would see would be the 101, 120, 5520 telephone communications. It would be the finish up of the HR director budget. The mayor's budget starts about halfway down that page on page 6 of 59.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone, any questions? Okay, we'll move into the city administrator. Any questions, concerns, comments, city administrator budget lines? You'll note throughout the budget that there are not many lines at all that were increased. A lot of that is the fact of the uncertainty around where things will go into next year with coronavirus. The economy continues to be strong. We may come back to council later in the year to increase some areas that we reduced in the budget to make sure that we kept things pretty level. But at least for now, we wanted to present a very tight budget to all of you so that there weren't a lot of extra expenditures just with so many unknowns, unlike a normal year going into 2020. Okay, the next section then would be page 8 of 59. It is City Hall. That covers a lot of the expenses here at City Hall, such as our utilities, trash service, the generator, supplies that we operate out of City Hall with. Pretty straightforward. You don't pay those bills and the lights aren't on and the building's not functioning. So not much wiggle room in any of those lines. Then we would move on to page 9, which is general administration. This is kind of the catch-all section for items that are not just one single department. Things such as our health plan administration, our flex benefits, contracts that we have with firms such as regional planning, TSET, that Seneca County Health District, and then different things such as street lighting bills, items that we have to rent for the year, the downtown facade grant, which we are anticipating returning the downtown facade grant to normal next year. However, if the economy has a downturn, if there's another shutdown, that is item number 1 that would be cut from the budget, most likely would be that facade grant program. But at least at this time, this budget is predicated on funding the facade grant back to normal, and it's a $100,000 amount. Any questions on Fund 124 General Administration? Yes, Mr. Jones.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I feel someone should ask a question, and I guess I'll be the first one. Under the second line item on 124, we're looking at Cobra Health Insurance 9750. It's my understanding, isn't Cobra paid by the individual person versus or the city paid? I guess I'm just confused on. I thought Cobra was an individual out of pocket type thing.
Yes. Kathy, would you be the best one to answer that, or should I bring Deb Reamer in for that? Because I do not do anything with Cobra to have the understanding to be able to answer Councilman Jones's question in depth enough for that.
I believe I can answer that. So we have to show any employees who are on COBRA on the books. So even though they are paying it, we still have to account for it and show it in our books. And the reason that it is so much higher is we do have an employee on COBRA that is going to go into the next year. So that's why there's such a big increase there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mayor, this is technicality, but SIDEC should be replaced by TSEP.
Yeah, I think we've just gotten in the habit of calling it TSEP in the budget line every year, and we've just never made that adjustment. But I believe technically the organization is still actually listed contractually as SIDEC. It's just the TSEP is the new adopted acronym of the organization. So my assumption is here we're going with the actual true name of the organization, not the doing business as name. Is that correct, Brent?
That is correct. It's still, the corporate name has not changed. TSEP is Tiffin Seneca Economic Partnership is a trade name, a DBA.
Yeah. So I guess we could put an AKA in there if it pleases you. Any other questions on that page?
I have one, Mayor.
Yes, Rich, are you wanting me to call on them or are you wanting?
Yeah, make it easier, Aaron.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Leopard.
Thank you. With three newer council members, you get down to landfill testing and remediation. This has been going on since the Bernie Holman years. You know, we've talked about this for the last 20 years, and it's probably something that's never going to go away. I know that in recent years, we have changed our monitoring contractors, I believe. And has the city been able to do any part of that on its own? I can't remember. I know we talked about it at one time.
If I could, Dale Thornton oversees that program along with Kevin Hughes, and I'm not sure which one of those two would be the best to answer it. But Dale, I'll defer to you, and if you need me to bring Kevin on, just let me know.
Sure, I'll be happy to answer that. We still use Hall and Associates to do 2 annual reports that the EPA requires of it. One is a wetlands report, which they were actually out and did just late last month. And the other is an annual report to the EPA that summarizes all of the testing we've done throughout the year, so that the EPA has an annual review and ability to see what those test results have demonstrated. The rest of the money is spent on testing, and we still do contract with a firm to do monthly testing there. So we spend probably about $3,000 a year on testing at the site using this firm that goes out and does that for us. This, for everyone's information, this landfill is on Township Road 90. If you ever want to go out there sometime, it's very difficult to find if you don't have a guide. But it really is not showing any gases that are escaping into the environment anymore. The biggest concern that the EPA has now is that we not impact the wetland area.
Yeah, it's actually one of the, if you were out there, for council members who haven't been there, we haven't done a trip for a while, so maybe in the spring we will, but if you walk through, it's what I think is one of the more beautiful pieces of land in Seneca County. It's got very large rolling hills, wooded areas, ravines, but unfortunately you cannot do anything with the property because of the fact that it was the old city landfill from the 50s that was closed down in, I think, the 60s. So we're stuck with it, and we have to continue to monitor it until the EPA tells us it's okay to stop monitoring, which unfortunately they will not give you any timeline. But based on the fact that this has been going on for over 20 years, I don't think there's much light at the end of the tunnel, unfortunately, with something like this. it'll probably be a minor expense for the foreseeable future into the budget. And as long as it stays minor, I guess we'll be happy with it.
Councilman Perry has his hand up,
Yep,
Mayor.
go ahead, Danny.
Yeah, so my family has been going out behind that land since I've been born. We've been camping out there for forever, since I can remember. And it has been greatly cleaned up. I know a lot of money has gone into putting the pipes in and everything and over the landfill and stuff. But man, it is gorgeous back there. And they just changed ownership here in the last few years, and they are really taking care of it and cleaning out the woods and stuff. So it's beautiful. I know the Boy
I
Scouts
would
back
love the
there.
day that we could turn that into some sort of a nature preserve it basically is a nature preserve just without people being able to walk it now, but it could be an awesome site once the all clear's been given by the EPA or something like that for walking trails or other things. But it's a haven right now for deer and wildlife. Every time we're out there, you'll see all sorts of deer and pheasant and other kind of animals. So beautiful sight.
We did make a run at the EPA about 3.5 years ago, asking if we could create an educational site so that we could take school children out to see how you're supposed to transition from a landfill to a usable area. We weren't successful at that time, but we may take another run at it this year if the budget allows me to squeeze enough money out of Hall and Associates to sit down with the EPA again and have that discussion.
Councilman Gillig had his hand up, Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Councilman Gilling.
I love it. A former city landfill's nature preserve would go along nicely with our city park that used to be a cemetery. We've got all sorts of calling cards here in the city. I love it.
We just like multi-uses here in the
Yes.
community. Adaptive reuse. Is that the word they use today, or the term is adaptive reuse? Councilman Jones? Oh, you're muted, Councilman Jones. Councilman Jones, you're muted. We can't hear you. Sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mayor. I should not happen again. It probably will, but it should not. Anyways, maybe twice in my life, I've driven Township Road 90, where you're speaking of, and I'm more familiar with Tiffin Developmental Center going as you enter it, going towards 101. They have their own private dump landfills, whatever they call it. But I believe there's no trespassing signs, no trespassing signs. Is this city landfill, old city, is it open to the public, or is it do not enter kind of deal?
No,
Well, there is a gate. There is a gate to the property, and it is locked. So there is not public access to the area.
Okay, all right. Well, it sounded like it was. That's why I was.
Yeah,
curious.
no, we used to allow very minor use of the site in the past. And the EPA told us that was not permitted any longer. As part of the plan, we have to restrict public access to it. So of course, if there's something educational, like for us to go out there to walk it as council, have a better understanding of new council members, that's permitted. But they do not want people on there because it can, the whole envelope of the site being closed up, if anyone was driving through there and it was muddy and they would tear into the seal and that sort of thing. So the EPA has told us that we have to restrict access to the site. So I would just love the day that it's finally remediated off our books and we can turn it into some sort of a nature preserve or walking trails or I could see where Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts could really have some neat programs out there because it's absolutely beautiful. But until we get that all clear, we have to restrict access to it, or we could have issues with the EPA.
Ending up, if Dale lines up a road trip, I'll be glad to go along someday. But
Yeah.
Wait till it's not too wet in the spring.
Yeah, the couple of times I've been out there, it really is gorgeous. The one thing you've got to make sure, even if it's 100 degrees, you want to have pants on because the ticks are pretty bad with how thick everything is out there. So we'll schedule something this spring and we'll all take a hike. Councilman Perry?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, under professional services, rent and leases, what all goes into that total?
Yeah, I'll answer Councilman Perry if I might. We rent our copiers from MT Business along with our printers. So most of that expense in rent and leases is related to renting all of the copiers throughout finance and city hall and the various areas that we have. And then our printers, that includes the maintenance of those so that we don't have any maintenance on those items. So that's what's in that portion. And then just a line or two down, it says maintenance of computers.
Yeah.
That's primarily our contract with NCOESC to be our IT guru for the city. We do not have an IT department. We contract with NCOESC to provide those services to us. So the bulk of that money is for payment to NCOESC for their monthly fees to us.
And I remember this question last year came up too. It probably comes up every year, but I just wanted to, out of curiosity, what that was for. So
No, it's good for the rest of the council members to know that as well. I will say that our maintenance of computer line went up a little bit this year. NCOESC, since I've been here 5 years, has never raised their hourly rate to us. They did raise it this year, so it went up about 25% over last year. So that's why you see the jump to 47.7 this year from 38,000 last year.
Yeah, but it is nice because us contracting with the NCOESC essentially provides us with 24-hour IT services to the city at a cost of about $47,000 a year. Whereas if we wanted to hire someone, the salary alone would be above that, plus factor in benefits and other things, and it would just, it's a real savings. And I can't thank Doc Lahosky and Kathy Moore out at the NCOESC enough, because they've really been a great assistance to us at keeping costs down, but providing that 24-hour service if we need it in a pinch or an emergency here at the city. Yes, Councilman Perry.
Yeah, just another question under the facade grant. I saw we spent about what, 60,000 year to date, and are we projecting to do 100,000 next year then?
Yes, if you may recall, when the shutdown occurred back in April and May, that was the first item that I ordered cut from the budget, and I froze the program. And that's why the money was not spent. We would have easily used all of the money, but that was just basically the first asset that I froze for us here in order to free up funds, not knowing what we were going to get into for the rest of the year financially. It was hard for me to justify funding that and turning around later in the year if things got dicey enough and laying off employees and other things. So facade enhancement has done a lot for the economy. It's helped a ton of businesses, but at the same time, you can't be spending that kind of money at the same when you don't know what's happening with the pandemic like we did all the way back in April and May. But the plan is now, since we're able to get our budget back to where we had hoped to have it going into 2021, is to have that filled. But if DeWine shuts us down again, which I hope he does not, and I of course can't support, if he does do it, I can't support it happening again. But if he does, that would be one of the first things that we would freeze again in 2021, just because it's helpful, but it is not absolutely necessary. And that's what we did this year, was any expense that was not absolutely necessary, we went ahead and froze, not knowing what we were going to get into. Now that we are 11 out of our 12 months through on the year, and we can see that revenue has picked back up, we return most of the spending in 2021 to originally planned 2020 levels. So that facade enhancement is one of the many items that came back, but it's also item number one that will be cut if we get in trouble financially. Councilman Jones? You're muted again, Ken. You said it wasn't going to happen again.
That's true.
You lied to us, Councilman Jones.
And I said it probably would. Anyways, on page 9 there, the 5th and 6th line items down, SIDEC and marketing. Doesn't SIDEC do the marketing for the city of Tiffin? Or am I answering my own question saying they do the bulk of it and Tiffin does the rest?
Any marketing that is expense related, yes, they do it. Of course, the city of Tiffin, we do minor marketing. The Parks Department, for example, markets their own programs.
Okay.
We do free social media marketing here at the city, but anything as it relates to like the marketing of our spec buildings or marketing in business magazines, et cetera, to attract, that goes through TSEP with that contract.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on general admin? Okay, then we will flip the page and move on. The next set of numbers is 132, the finance department. I know there's a couple of different pages there, so I'll give you all a few minutes. And if there are any questions, either myself or Kathy can answer those for council members. A lot of all the transfers and everything are in there from money that gets transferred from one fund to another. So that's why you'll see under 58, or excuse me, under 5,900 with the non-governmental charges and everything, we have to move money to cover certain grants like the State Route 18 TAP program. And then you've got some of the other things out there. The money that we put into the Parks Department always is done as a special transfer for Parks operating budget. And then, of course, you'll see in there the income tax levy. We're projecting right around $1.25 million of revenue for the new income tax levy that was put in place. That all of that goes to roads and bridges. Councilman Leopard, do you have a question?
Remind me what DRATAC is.
That is a fee that comes back to us from, is it licenses, Kathy, or is that fuel? And it comes to us through the Seneca County Auditor's Office. I just cannot remember.
I know that's one of the fees that comes back from the auditor's office that we get.
Yeah, we can look that up and email it to you, Steve. I know it's only $4,500, but 4,500 is 4,500. But yeah, I know it's a fee that comes through Julie Atkins, the county auditor's office. I just cannot remember what makes that fee up.
Yeah, I remember we've talked about it before, but I can't remember what it is either.
Yeah.
No, I'm good with it. It's
Councilman Jones?
I was going to ask the same question, but I thought I would forget to unmute myself. But yeah, I saw that too, DRETAC. So that's a good question.
Yeah, we'll have Kathy talk to Julie about that and just email it or let you all know at the next council meeting what that DRETAC fee is.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the finance department? One item, and Kathy, we may have you do a little explaining of this also. We did take, there's been a lot of changes in the finance office recently with employee retirements, et cetera. There's always been a part-time position in the income tax department in finance. They always worked 28 hours plus per week. This budget, we did bump that position up to a full-time position. The reason for that is one, it is needed next door, but two, it's always concerned myself and Kathy and Dale that the folks in finance all have their own jobs that they know very well. The problem is we never have any cross training over there because they're always so busy in their own roles. And we've been very blessed in the fact that we've never had, Kathy Kaufman, when she was payroll, for example, off for a long period of time. Well, the problem is if that payroll person is off, Kathy, as director of finance, is literally the only person that can do that job. And the same goes for the person that handles all the purchase orders, et cetera. So we would like to bump this position up to full time so that we can begin to do some significant cross training in that department so that folks understand roles. So when it comes to the time that somebody needs a significant time off, whether it's for sickness, whether it's for having a child, whatever it may be, that there's some redundancy and backup over there. Because it essentially all rolls to the finance director. And we all know how busy Kathy is already, or any finance director in that role. And we'd like to bump this position up to full time. So because of the fact that the hours don't change much, you barely notice the increase when looking through the budget line, which probably is why if there weren't any questions even around that increase. But that is what that small increase in that line is for. Is bumping that position from part-time at about 28 hours up to a full-time role here with the city. So Kathy, I don't know if you want to add anything else or if I explained it well enough, but you're welcome to add anything else that you want to, or if council members have questions.
I think that was an excellent explanation. That's exactly what we're looking to do. There's plenty of work to do in income tax. Where we might see a little bit of increase then would be the health insurance lines. If the person that we choose would take family plan, dental, and vision, that's where we would see an increase. But the wages, there is literally hardly any difference at all.
Yeah, it will all come down to what they select for insurance. And if someone's hired that is on a spouse's plan, you're not even going to notice really any increase at all in the line. It just depends on what insurance they take. But we all know this day and age with all the uncertainties, you need to have some redundancy and backup. And it really worries us if our current payroll officer, Mary, goes down over there. Kathy's going to have to do the finances for the whole city at the same time she's trying to run payroll. And we really need to have cross training and backup in that department. Yeah, Rich.
Yeah, Kathy, have we gotten the bugs worked out of that new auditing program that we bought?
New auditing program, I guess.
Yeah.
What are you referring to? You talking about the new computer system?
Yes.
We're getting much better than we were last year at this time. I can definitely say that. It was a difficult conversion, but everybody's kind of settling in, and we're definitely getting a better handle on it this year.
Thanks.
Yeah, that new system took a lot of getting used to for a lot of folks. Some of the things are still getting used to, but I think overall it's good. One of the positives is the new style of printouts of the budget that you all are looking at. I know it's much easier to read and follow, but the system overall has been, it's been good. It just took a lot of getting used to. Brent, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I had a question. Since we were talking payroll, one of the assumptions is the 3% pay increase for non-union employees effective the first of the year, and the minimum wage increase. So there will be a new payroll pay ordinance, correct?
Yes.
And so Kathy, you have that attachment that could go on the document that I could prepare?
Yep.
Okay. So that'll be ready for the next meeting.
Okay.
Any other questions on finance office? Okay, then we will head to page 12. At the very bottom, it starts the Civil Service Commission. This budget is put together by the city administrator to handle our civil service matters here at the city.
So for those of new to council or have not been through this before, included in the Civil Service Commission budget are the fees we pay to the National Testing Network, who provides us with candidates for our fire or police. It also pays for any examinations that we have to give. As for instance, last year we gave a lieutenant's examination, and there are fees associated with that test and the assessment. It varies. We never know from year to year how many examinations we may have to give. That's dependent on who retires or when they decide to retire. And so there may not even be a promotional exam in one year, but there may be two in the following year. So we keep that figure right around $14,000 a year. That normally covers any expenses we have. In some years, we have money to give back at the end of the year. This year, it only shows that we've had $3,000 in expenses. That's a little understated because we still have expenses coming in from the lieutenant's exam in the fire department. So we'll probably hit around $10,000 this year in expenses. So that $13,000 is our best estimate of what we could incur depending on just how many promotional exams we have to give.
All right, yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Some years we have to come to council and ask for more money because of retirements and additional promotions. Other years, there's plenty of money that gets turned back in with the budget. It just depends on, like City Administrator said, what level of promotions and hiring we have to do in that department. Councilman Leopard?
Thank you. Several years ago, we also eliminated pay for civil service members.
Yeah, for the board members. Mhm.
Yes, that used to be a paid position. Now it's voluntary.
Yeah, it was really strange. It was, I believe, the only board that we have with the city that was paid, and it was some really small figure, like $250 a year or something. But all of the extra bookkeeping it required, we finally decided that it was best to just eliminate that and make it a voluntary position like all of our other boards. And that board actually meets much less and probably has to do a lot less actual work than many of our other boards that the city has that are strictly voluntary.
I think the 2 years that I was a member of that board, we met maybe 4 times total out of 2 years.
Yeah, that seems about accurate. I would say, depending on the amount of promotions, probably 2 to 4 times a year at the most is what that board gets together, I think. Right, Dale?
It's interesting because that too varies, just like the finances around it. It really depends on how many promotions we have, how many hirings we're going to have in any one year. So it varies from year to year. Since I have been here, we have never paid the commission members. So it's been at least 5 years since they received any pay for serving on the commission board. Now, I know we've met probably 6 times in the last 3 months. So it really is a function of what's going on in the fire and police department.
Okay. Next, we will move on to city engineer's budget. We have Matt Watson out in the audience, so if there are any questions or comments, we can gladly bring him in for those. Pretty straightforward overall. Yes, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm probably answering my own question, but it just jumped out at me. Overtime on city engineers department. Evidently, the 2 of them, 3 of them are salaried, and that's why there's no overtime in that line item.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay.
A few years back, we used to have an hourly employee up there for assistance. However, that position has gone unfilled and hasn't been utilized in some time now. Councilman Leopard?
Are we underfunded in the newspaper and advertising area?
I know we talked about that when we went through Matt's budget, but he seemed pretty confident in where that was. So we're going to run with it. And if we need to ask for more money, we need to ask for more money later. But he felt confident with that figure. Any other questions? Okay. We will move on then to boards and commissions. There's just the one line there. That's basically a placeholder for boards and commissions if any of them have to do any kind of special advertising or anything for required meetings. Typically, no more than about $2,000 gets used out of that fund, if that even. And then next we will go into the police department, which is one of the largest budgets in the city. Police and fire make up well over 60% of the city's budget. Acting Chief Windsor is off this week. I believe he's out deer hunting, but we do have Aaron Russell who's attending this evening. If there are any questions from council members for either the administration or Lieutenant Russell regarding the police department budget, we would be happy to answer those for you. And with that, we'll also include dispatchers, since they do fall under the purview of the police department. So if there are any questions on police or dispatch.
Aaron, there was a big jump from 2018 to 2020 in overtime. Any particular reason for that?
From 18 to... Okay, yes. So if you look, most of the overtime in 18 was listed under contractual obligations.
Okay.
You see, yep, you see it was basically 147,000
Right.
there. And this year, the proposed total for overtime is 147.5. So it used to, police and fire, things used to be broken down between overtime and contractual obligations. And we've just, at the end of the day, we've decided overtime is overtime. It's one bucket versus having one bucket for overtime, another bucket for contractual obligations, another bucket for training overtime. At the end of the day, overtime is overtime. And by bumping things into different areas, we felt that it didn't show the full picture on what overtime was, because you'd have one type of overtime on this page, another. It's now just all listed there under the overtime and training overtime versus all that contractual obligation overtime that we used to have, to make it more straightforward and easier to understand where the overtime is occurring. So that's what it is there. If you look, the totals actually have barely gone up on overtime since 2018 all the way to the 2021 proposed budget. There's barely been an increase in police department overall overtime.
Yep. Thanks.
You're welcome. Lieutenant Russell, I don't know if you have anything to add, but if you want to say anything, you can just put your hand up on the Zoom raise hand feature, but it appears that there aren't many questions from council members. Not that I'm complaining, guys. Okay. Next, we move into, I think fire is next on our sheets. Yes. So fire starts at the bottom of page 17. Department 230. And like I said a moment ago, police and fire make up well over 60% of our overall budget. So these are the two largest areas by far. We do have some firefighters to replace going into next year due to retirements. Of course, we've done the same with the police department. Sorry, I've got all my notes at different areas here on the desk so I can bring them up quick enough, and not having all of that room to spread out like we usually do at the council meeting, to kind of have to be a little more compact and things underneath other items. Are there any questions in the Tiffin Fire and Rescue Division budget? I know there's a lot there, so if you need a few moments to look through it, it's completely fine. Councilman Leopard? Steve, you're muted if you're talking, sorry.
Maintenance of radio equipment went up to 35,000.
Yes, I think that's on page 18.
Correct.
Yes, yes. So those were new radios that we are purchasing. We're slowly starting to go over to the new style of radio that there's no sunset date on yet when they're required, but there will be a date into the future that all the radios are required to be upgraded for fire and EMS. So we are starting to replace those radios and move forward with that process so that we're not kind of put up against the wall with a deadline. But in the near future, we're told that all of the radios are going to be forcibly converted. And you're not going to have a choice to do so in the state of Ohio. So we're just trying to get ahead of the curve here and get some of those replaced now while we have the opportunity. Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mayor. I was thinking about asking, but I didn't. But I just went back to the police on their health and life insurance. 376,000, 340,000. Sounded high to me. Now I'm looking at to make sure I get it right, the fire department, health and life insurance, 519. Add those two together. That's almost $900,000 for health and life insurance. That just sounds like an astronomical number to myself. But
And that represents 80% of the total insurance cost, because 20% of insurance costs are paid, the premiums are paid by the employees themselves.
oh, okay. Okay, there was two numbers just sounded high, but okay, thank you.
Yeah, those are the figures that it's the same percentage that everyone else is paying on their health insurance. It's just the breakdown because these two departments combined have probably not quite, but close to 2/3 of our employees. So they're going to be the two biggest health and life insurance lines by far. And a lot of them are younger, family plan insurance, et cetera. So costs add up very quickly. Any other questions on fire and rescue? We do have Rob Chappell, the interim chief, out there if there are any questions or if Rob has anything to add. Okay, well, we can always come back to if there are any questions. Fair housing, the same $100 we put in there for advertising, just in case we have to. In my 9 years of doing this, we've never had to utilize the $100 fair housing advertising money. You have Shade Tree Commission. There is increase in that budget for a couple of reasons. One, we have an increased amount of plantings next year of trees, and two, with the projects that we've done, there are a lot more hanging baskets. There are a lot more flower beds, etc. So with that, there is an increased cost. Also, we used to previously go with Norwesco, which essentially gave us all of the landscaping plantings, etc. At cost. Unfortunately, they are shutting down completely. So we now have to outsource that. We're still getting a good deal, but unfortunately, we do not have that rock bottom at cost source anymore to provide us with all of the beautiful landscaping items for all of the planters and the hanging baskets, etc. So we are still getting the items locally. We just do not have the option of Norwesco any longer for the rock bottom prices. And we are planting additional trees next year as well. So that is the increase that you'll see on the shade tree. Charter Review Commission, we've just put money in as a placeholder. Depends on how long their work goes into next year. I would anticipate we'll probably use close to the budgeted amount. Any questions on charter review? I know many of you have been joining our meetings. We really appreciate that. All right, next department. That concludes all of the strictly general fund departments within the city. There are several special funds. So the first is the street department. That is our street maintenance. All of the folks out on Miami Street at the city garage. Brandon Berner is here this evening. So if there are any questions for our superintendent, Brandon Berner, I'm sure he'd be happy to answer those. Or Brandon, if you have anything that you want to add, just click the raise hand button. If council members do recall, we have with the street department, half of the employees are street, half of them are sewer. Obviously, one half is paid out of street funds, the other half is sewer funds, because that department takes care of all of the street maintenance work, alley maintenance work, et cetera, but they also take care of all of, or most of the sewer maintenance work, such as manhole covers and a lot of the different more minor work within the sewer themselves. You know, when we do an entire sewer separation project, no, they're not the ones out doing the separation project. They're doing a lot of follow-up involved with sewer. So half of the department is here under street maintenance. The other half is sewer employees. Councilman Jones, I see, yes, I see your hand up.
Thank you. The last line item on page 21,
Yes.
and I see it got bumped up from 18, 19, 20,000 for maintenance vehicles. With all the vehicles they got and the abuse that the employees probably put on, that doesn't sound like a lot for, I don't know how many vehicles are out there, but I mean, you're talking dump trucks and trailers and all kind of vehicles. It just sounds like a low number.
Yeah, they do a very good job with that. And part of it too, we have in-house mechanics that are able to work on a lot of the vehicles and really keep the cost down unless it's something significant. Typically, most years we would budget 18 to 20,000. They're just so good at not usually needing that money. That's why it plays out a lot of years in the $8,000 to $10,000 range. But there is some equipment that is starting to age out there. They want to do kind of some rebuilds on some of the engines and things. So Brandon did bump the budget up by about $5,000, but we've got a very handy staff that takes a lot of pride in the equipment that they have out there. I do see Brandon's hands up, so I'm going to bring him in. We've got a great staff that are able to diagnose and fix a lot of the issues that they have out at Public Works. But Brandon, you are in here if there's something you wanted to add.
Yeah, I just we did add 5,000 on there. We're trying to get more intense on our maintenance plan. So we do a great job of keeping them running for a long period of time. And as much and you're right, Councilman, that we do put a lot of abuse on these systems, working them every day. We're trying to get a little bit more comprehensive, and you see that bumped, especially on some of our bigger vehicles and more technical ones, some of our tractors and our street sweeper, things like that require a little bit more of the out of shop maintenance and giving them that look over from someone that has the experience. So that's our goal, to keep improving that maintenance plan.
Yeah, they do a tremendous job, Councilman Jones. One other item that we will let you know about is they are planning to do 2 seasonal hires in the Public Works Department. They've never done seasonal hires before. However, in order to help keep up with a lot of the vegetation tasks, we've agreed to allow Brandon to hire 2 seasonal employees. So seasonal only, they're not full-time, et cetera. But Brandon, why don't you just kind of give them a quick rundown while you're on here of some of the things that you're planning to have those 2 seasonal hires do.
You're 100% correct. Mostly just focusing on the vegetation. A lot of the times, we've taken on a lot as a city to keep greenery the way it is, and when we talk about it's kind of a constant battle with that vegetation. And our arborist, John Pottinger, and assistant arborist Nick Moses, they're fighting the trees. But when you talk about the brush and the grass and everything, we just have so much. It's hard to pull a guy that's meant to be working on a sewer, and we're paying and investing that time and effort in working on a sewer or a street, and he is spending 2 days on a lawnmower. It's getting to be a little much. So being able to upkeep some of those areas and upkeep them to a better standard, while freeing up those hands to work on our streets and sewers at the same time.
Great. Councilwoman Yanatuno?
Will that address then the concerns that I had to have a part of one of my meetings about taking care of the walking trails and things? Because that had come up that maybe Public Works could take care of that. And so is that kind of the hope here with the 2 hires, is to help with that?
That's actually 2 parts, and I'm glad you brought that up, Councilwoman. It's both those folks to keep that brush back and keep back on a regular basis. The other thing is you'll see that there's a substantial request for my department for funds to buy a tractor, which is a tractor with an articulating arm mower to help keep those back with even with less people than what that task would require, in addition to those seasonal help. So we're there's about 2 miles of trail that isn't just sidewalk. It is trail in a woods of some sort, which is a heck of a lot of maintenance. So we got eaten a lot with the windstorm this year, even just trying to keep those trails passable, which doesn't seem like it, but when you walk in some of those, it's a jungle. So yes, ma'am, that is exactly what the intent is to get ourselves on a cycle where we can actually maintain it. We're not fighting it. So
Wonderful. Thank you.
Councilman Leopard?
I really like that thought process, Brandon. Good job.
thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I think it makes a ton of sense. The summer months is when they could use the extra reinforcements, and for them to be able to go out and tackle some of these issues that while we haven't been able to get to them as regularly as we would like to, I think will go a long way towards just helping the community look better and just be nicer overall for folks. So thank you, Brandon. Any other questions? Anything else that you want to add, Brandon, quick while you're here?
The only other thing I'd like to add, Mayor, is that you do see a slight bump on our rents and leases in terms of equipment. So we've had a couple of pieces that have died this year that are not worth the money invested in, as we look at some of the commercial things such as compaction equipment, things like that. We're trying to do a better job overall, and the guys have done great at both using the resident knowledge and gaining knowledge. And it's been nice to have that muscle to flex just a little bit, and that extra money is helping us save the traditional costs we would have paid on a full piece of equipment for a compactor or things like that, and get what we need when we need it, and then and get it back without having to maintain it all year. So that's another part of that small ask there. So
Perfect. Any other questions on street department? Okay. We will move on then. So we should be on page 24. And that just gets into items that are several different grants. You'll see at the very top, line 215, that's just that income tax line showing up on the expense. Then getting down into 231, you've got our block grant, CHIP grants, et cetera. Those are all just money in, money out, different grant programs. The same thing on the next page with the revolving loan, CHIP revolving loan. So the next real item for city funds would be 242, the Park and Recreation Department. We do have Bryce Kuhn here this evening. If there are any questions, or Bryce, if you want to add anything, just raise your hand. Not much change there. Of course, we have the same wage increases that everyone else in the city got, the same 3%. Trying to get to the parks budget here in my stack. So a lot of the items are very similar to what you've seen in previous years with the Parks and Recreation Department. We did remember to bump up the fireworks. As we discussed, we wanted to have a bigger fireworks display next year, since we were not able to do anything this year. Because of that, we have increased the fireworks budget by $5,000. It is now $20,000. We're really hoping when we get through this whole pandemic that by 4th of July, we'll be able to have an extra big celebration out at Hedges Boyer Park. I'm allowing Bryce in here. He did have his hand up, so if there are any questions too, but Bryce talked to the fireworks company and they said for another 5, they could really do some cool things and extend the show by, I think they said another 10 minutes. So we should have the longest and biggest fireworks display that we've ever had in the community next year. Is kind of a hopeful at that point goodbye to coronavirus, and hopefully within a few years after, we're never talking about it again. But I'm glad that Bryce remembered that, and I think it's the least we can do. We saved the money this past year without fireworks, so to increase that budget line is the right thing to do, and just to give people something to celebrate. So Bryce, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yes, the only real budget increase that you'll see is the 5544 line, the e-screen dues and fees. That is bumped up, but that is a reimbursed yearly from the e-screen foundation. That is just the contractual service with the landscape for the spring cleanup and mulching every year. So that's the only reason that was bumped up.
Yeah, so that is money in and then money out. So we're reimbursed for those expenses, but we still have to show that as an expense. Councilman Leopard, did you have a question?
That was my question.
Wow, we've got Bryce Kuhn, the mind reader, in here too.
I saw him brewing there, the mind thinking.
Well, is there anything else, Bryce, you want to add and see if you can guess Councilman Jones's question before he asked? Go ahead, Councilman Jones.
Thank you. I want to call this a sore subject, but back to the fireworks. I had that circled before you spoke about that. And I'm going from memory, and of course my memory is not always the best, but when we talked about postponing fireworks, and I spoke about eliminating fireworks, and for some reason I had $25,000 on my mind for fireworks. I thought someone said it cost, which would have been here in 2020. 25,000 sticks in my head. So when I heard someone say they bumped it by 5,000, I was hoping that would be from 25 to 30, but am I the only one who heard 25,000 in?
Yes, so Councilman Jones, that 25 was the full cost. So the 15,000 that we usually spend is the cost for the fireworks company that comes in and shoots the fireworks off, for them to come in and do it and all the material. The 25 that we talked about was the overall cost of the extra cost that it takes for the Parks and Recreation Department, for the extra staffing, the overtime, and then also for police and fire for staffing and overtime.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so by canceling the fireworks this past year, we saved about $22,000 to $25,000, but the only portion that comes out of the parks budget here on the fireworks line is actually the fireworks themselves and the company that comes in with the license that sets them off. The other items come out of each department's either overtime or payroll line. So yeah, so we are increasing the fireworks display by that. But the nice part is that should not change the cost in anyone else's overtime versus a normal fireworks display. Yes, Councilman Jones?
And I'm going to answer my own question, but it's too late for Mr. Kuhn tonight to request another $5,000 on that line item of fireworks.
Well, I mean, council's just hearing the budget for the first time, so city council can make any changes they want up until the time that you all pass this. So if that's something that you want to propose doing, then by all means, if your fellow council members are okay with it and Bryce is, that's something that you can change. This is not final yet.
Well, I'll just start the discussion. We talked here in 2020 earlier about having a celebration and picking the community up, et cetera, et cetera. 15,000, 20,000 for fireworks. I don't know how many fireworks $20,000 is, but I'm thinking $25,000 would be a real celebration compared to previous years. So I'll let my fellow council people chime in if they will.
Go ahead, Dawn.
I'd rather leave it alone because we don't know what's coming up, and possibly a lot of times the businesses have stepped up and they may want to add to that fund as a donation. So I'd rather leave it where it sits right now.
Okay, I tried. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Councilman Jones, you still have 3 meetings to build support if you want to change their minds. So any other questions on Parks and Recreation? I guess I'm also including this, the swimming pool. We are forecasting to have the pool open next year. That's its own separate department, but it's still part of Parks and Recreation. So I do still have Bryce in here if there are any questions on the swimming pool or anything with that. Councilman Leopard.
I just want to make sure our temporary employees have the 3% pay raise in there as well.
Kathy, do you recall if you included that?
I know we have to make sure that we're following the state guidelines as well, as far as what the minimum wage is. So I have to look at that, I think, but we're right there as far as the first year step. And then I guess it's kind of council's discretion if you want those to be increased from where they are currently.
I know in our
Yeah.
I know in our Parks Department, we have several long-term employees that keep coming back and back. And probably about, geez, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, I don't know if we made a lump sum payment at the end of the year or not, or somehow maybe in the mid-season, they got their extra pay raise as well. That no, we had to go to bat for that.
Yeah, because the part-time people aren't automatically part of the 3% increase. It's usually something that council discusses and decides on where they want them to be. And I just kind of give you an idea of where we have them, and then you can discuss if you want to change that.
Councilman Jones.
Thank you. I was trying to look it up and I can't put my fingers on it. I earlier heard Law Director Howard talk about 3% increase. Heard Councilman Leopard talk about 3% increase. I thought in this year when we voted, I believe Councilman Gillig proposed a 2% increase. Was that just for 2020 or
Yeah,
am I getting confused on 2%, 3%?
Yeah, so the 2020 was the 2% was for the 2020 figures. However, next year, we're proposing 3% wage increases for all employees across the board, union and non-union. But again, that's a thing that can be changed, Councilman Jones, if you and your fellow council members disagree with it. But that is what the administration's proposal is a 2% or a 3% wage increase for all the employees in 2021. Anything else? Okay, the next line that I have would be all the way onto page 31. And that would be about halfway down, the OPWC grant. That is a grant that we have budgeted $125,000 for that we expect to receive. The city submitted the application. Matt Watson did a very good job with that in the engineer's office. He made a very good presentation, and it appears that we will be funded. However, we will not know until the OPWC committee meets sometime here in the near future. And all of that is tabulated, but we're pretty sure, comparing previous year scores, et cetera, we're about 99% sure that that grant will be funded. Of course, if it is not funded, we will not be spending the money. So that will be money coming in and money going right back out with that grant. After that, we're up to just the municipal court. As you'll see, they've got contractual costs in there for computer supplies and shredding services. They're right now in the process of trying to get every document from court that they're required to keep in perpetuity scanned so that they can get rid of all of their long-standing hard copies. They do not have the staff to be able to nonstop 40 hours a week be scanning documents. So a lot of that cost that you see in there on page 32 in the middle of the page is for them to pay a company to come in and scan those documents in and then to get rid of the old documents. The nice part is everything current they are scanning in as they go. This is to take care of files, some of them from all the way back in the 60s and 70s, they're scanning into the system that they're required to keep. So this line eventually will fall off once they get caught up, but it is a multi-year process that started a couple of years back. Then you're on to the rest of the municipal court, the probation department. As we mentioned earlier with the municipal court expenses, they make up the entire county municipal court. We just host them here in the city, and we're required to maintain their budget. Any questions around the court's budgets, probation, et cetera? Then if you go down to the bottom of page 34 under the TIF, that is exactly what that is. If you recall our tax increment financing, Progress Parkway area out by the new Willows Care Center. That is some of the various figures from the TIF. You've got Aldi's improvement that they made, Trilogy's, Magic Tunnel, Panda Express, etc. And then I think we are all the way up to page 36. You just have police and fire pension funds on there. Those are required amounts that we have to put in for the police and fire pension. We do that every year. Market Street Streetscape, that project will wrap up next year. Most of it has been completed on Jefferson Street, as I'm sure you have seen driving through there or attending the farmers markets. But a lot of the expenses are still set to be paid next year. And then there is a return to the general fund from part of that as well. Fund 295 and 381 street maintenance. You will see there the construction for Shawn Avenue. When we announced last month the new manufacturer, the new plastics manufacturer that's coming in to the spec building, part of that, as we know that we've discussed at the council meeting, we applied for a grant to improve Shawn Avenue in that area so that it could handle vehicular truck traffic. You see the construction part, the city is receiving a grant of about $125,000. The city has to put some of our own money in, but that will be paid back very quickly from the new manufacturer and the income tax wages that brings into the community. But in order to land that job, we do have to increase the capacity and the weight of Shawn Avenue so that semi trucks can access the site for that new manufacturing facility. Other than that, we can get into capital fund then if there are no other questions on the general fund. So into capital, this is that same sheet that used to be basically a sheet and a half previous under the old computer system that had everyone's capital improvements. So this is non-general fund money. We are required by law to put at least 10% into our capital fund. We have done so. You'll see the various capital fund expenses this year. that are planned. There are some changes planned for the municipal building itself. If I could, I'll have Dale explain the few items that he has planned maintenance-wise here at City Hall.
The bulk of the money for the municipal building is to continue the roof replacements. We have done police, we have done the annex building. Next year, we will do the fire station and the upper roof on the City Hall building itself. So the cost of the fire station and upper City Hall roof will come to roughly $79,500. That will receive a reimbursement grant from NOPEC of roughly $45,000. So we're going to be spending the difference, about $34,000 coming out of our capital dollars, the city's capital dollars, the remainder actually being reimbursed to us by NOPEC in a reimbursement grant for those roof replacements. The other $4,500 is really around renovation and upgrades within the building itself that are scheduled next year. That brings the total to the amount that you see on the page there of the 89,000 or the $84,000, I guess. That's all that's planned within City Hall.
Moving forward, Finance Department, computer software, Kathy, why don't you take that one since that's your capital item?
That's just one of the payments that we owe for the new software. We have to pay for several years for our software, very expensive. So you'll see a payment from the finance area and then also one in the sewer area where we're making those payments.
Police Department, capital expense is just 2 new police vehicles. We try every year to rotate 2 new vehicles in and get rid of 2 old vehicles. What happens a lot of times are the 2 vehicles that we decommission are then handed down to either the detective division or something along those lines, and then they get rid of some of the old vehicles that we have here at the city. We have to rotate them out because of the heavy wear and tear that they have, constantly driving on city streets. And with the fact that they're out and about, they really do get excessive wear and tear and mileage on them. So the goal is every 2 years to replace them. If you do look back in 2018, because of how tight things were with the budget, we were only able to purchase 1. And then in 19, Chief Stevens had to really work out some deals to try to get both of those vehicles. So we've now been able to return things to normal levels. Unfortunately, more and more manufacturers have stopped making the various police vehicles, so we're getting very limited to the vehicles that are available out there for police departments that work for us, which is why we've gotten creative. This past year, Chief Stevens purchased 2 F-150s instead of cars or SUVs, but that may actually be the way of the future that we've discussed, because the gas mileage is not much different. Is that it's most likely going to be either SUVs or the F-150s into the future for the police department. The cars are just not practical. They're too cramped. The area in the back for suspects that they put in is just not very large. We've had all sorts of electrical and other issues with the cars, but we've had a lot better luck with the SUVs and the pickup trucks so far. So the plan is to most likely stick with those into the future, or at least until we get the new chief in place next year for he or she to reevaluate things. Councilman Lepper?
I had a very short conversation with one of our sergeants about pickup trucks, and they're really liked. He said that the vision that the officers have is so much greater, and I think that's why they like them so well.
Okay. Moving on, fire department's capital. The bulk of that are upgrades at the fire station that the chief would like to do. A lot of this centers around, I believe, Dale, it's the bathroom improvements. Is that correct?
The bathroom improvements and some of the,
Sleeping.
I guess, the view of the inside of the firehouse when you go into fire station #1, we'd like to really spruce that up because that's our public's view of what the fire department is. And we haven't done much in the way of painting and improvements inside fire station 1 for a while. So between those bathrooms upstairs that need to be improved and some of the improvements we'd like to make for the public's view when we bring the kids on, and hopefully we can bring them back into the station. It really is our showpiece, and we need to spend some money inside the station sprucing it up a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, we had the ceremony for Andrew Brose's promotion over there, and you can just tell that it's way overdue for some cleaning up and paint inside. The paint has chipped and peeled considerably from the ceiling and the rafters. So we just want to get that area cleaned up, looking good. And then, like Dale said, the restrooms are in dire need of some improvement as well.
I believe Councilman Ayana Tuno had a question.
Oh, yes, Councilwoman.
It's Councilwoman Neal.
I'm sorry.
Just a curiosity question. I know a lot of the police station stuff was done in-house. So will the fire station, and it saved us quite a bit of money, will the fire station crew or somebody be doing it in-house, or will be hiring that out?
They often do a lot of the work themselves. If you look at Fire Station 2 that we did some improvements in over the last couple of years, they did a lot of that work themselves. The most of the cost is in the supplies, not necessarily the labor.
Yeah, and that's an issue that we've run into is the astronomical cost of drywall and 2x4s and everything has just gone up considerably, shockingly increases. So we hope we have enough there. If not, I'm sure you'll hear from us, but I think we'll be good with those figures in 2021. Then we're down to Public Works. Brandon already talked a good deal about his equipment. You also see underneath there the improvements to Shawn Avenue that we talked about. That's the capital side of what we have to expend. You've got the AEP charging stations, which that's a grant. So again, that's money in, money out. The next page are the railroad improvements. This is to complete the Quiet Zone project and the railroad safety improvement project throughout the community. The goal is, unless we get significantly behind, that will all be completed in 2021. And at some point next year, we'll be able to make application for the Quiet Zone throughout the city. You see the cost in there, a couple of the budget lines for the overall project. A lot of that, the vast majority of that, is being reimbursed by the 2 universities, but we have to show all of the expense in our budget since we're the ones paying for it. So the universities write the checks to us, we then expend the funds, but we have to show the full expenditures in here for the project. But that includes some of the work being done at the railroad crossings. It includes the improvements that are made to add the extra lane of traffic over near the Octagon House and Agler Hall by Heidelberg University, so that we're able to get the project completed, and then we'll make application to the Federal Rail Authority for the Quiet Zone in 2021. You've got Park and Recreation Department, the improvements that Bryce is making. Get my list out. You've got it in front of you right now, Dale. I'm trying to dig through my stack of each department's budget.
I believe we have Bryce on.
Is Bryce there? I'll bring him back in because I don't see where I set his stack. It must be mixed in with everything. So Bryce, I'm going to bring you back in real quick. Just
Perfect. The two things is a brand new WAM mower or wide area mower. We like to rotate these out. They're about a $72,000 12-foot mower. We keep one out of hedges, and then one travels to 6 of the larger 18 parks. Like I said, we try to transfer those out every 4 to 5 years just to get some money back out of them. This year, we're going to be able to get $25,000 out of the mower. We'll be turning back in. So that's our number one capital replacement piece. And then we're also going to be installing security systems, I should say security cameras out at Hedges Boyer Park, just due to all the vandalism that we've had the past year. Due to low staff in our department, have the extra eye will be nice to have. So those are the two capital purchase items.
Thanks, Bryce. Okay. Apologize for that. I've got papers all over trying to go through all of this. All right. That really, the only thing left then there in capital is the various loans that the city has out, our debt service. So for Schaefer Park bond, the notes for Progress Parkway, Fair Lane, all of those items are what remains there at the end, because those items do have to come out of capital because they are capital expenses. Any questions? We are not planning to do a full-on sidewalk program this year. We are going to make a few improvements as far as it goes with street paving projects where we have to bring the sidewalk up to code, but there is not a full-on neighborhood-wide sidewalk program like we have done some years, just to save on the capital fund. And to be honest with you, the engineer's office and Public Works do not have the time and capacity right now to map such a project out in 2021. Any questions on our capital expenses? I know that was a lot. Or all of the loans that we have out there, the bonds, you know, pretty straightforward. It's not like we have an option to pay them anyways. Okay, then we'll move on to the Water Pollution Control Center sewer plant. We do have Kevin Hughes here this evening. If anyone has any questions, you all know that they're going through their major overhaul and expansion project out there at the plant right now. Just over $14 million worth of total construction / engineer design and inspection work at the plant. So that has been all consuming for Kevin and his staff for a while now. But it's really going to bring the plant up to standard. It's going to increase our capacity and be great overall for things. We're on page 47, by the way. Staffing, same plan for next year. There's nothing out of the ordinary as far as that goes. They all, you know, we always, Kevin and his department for years, the sewer department has been kind of like Public Works. They've done a great job at handling almost all of their maintenance and anything of outside of, you know, the major construction items like the current plant expansion. They have just handled so much out there. And I think they, you know, people don't always understand and fail to recognize the great job that everyone out at Public Works does day in and or out at the Water Pollution Control Center does day in and day out to keep costs down. And, you know, you don't think about it as often. You flush a toilet or you run water and you just know it works. And I think that the guys out there don't get enough credit for the jobs that they do and all of the goofy times they're getting alarms and other things that they've got to come in or investigate items. So kudos to Kevin and his staff for a job well done out at the sewer plant. Are there any questions on the sewer end of things?
One observation I would make is that if you notice under their supplies and materials, their chemical cost will go down dramatically in 2021. That's because they'll be using ultraviolet as a part of the new improvements that are part of this long-term control plan upgrade out at the plant. So their chemical cost is going to go down substantially.
And the heartburn that we all have over storing all of that chlorine out there, correct, Dale?
That's correct. No more alarms in the middle of the night.
Scratch one off the list at least. But yes, overall, that's going to really do good things for the community and make things much safer out there at the plant. Well, that gets us through, the sewer department gets us through all of the expense side of things. You know, we can talk about revenue, but revenue is very straightforward. Like I said, we only ever so slightly bump up tax returns each year because we do not want to get in a situation where we are forecasting that, oh, well, we've had a lot of new businesses come to the community. We're going to bump, you know, our revenue up by 6-8%. We don't do that because it's just not the prudent thing to do. And especially next year, it's not the prudent thing to do because of coronavirus and the constant threat that we've been under from the governor of a shutdown. So we do not feel comfortable doing much of a revenue increase. If it happens, great. That's wonderful. And we will keep that in mind as the year progresses, if it looks like revenue is up higher than forecast. And we'll certainly take it into account with the future budget. But right now we forecasted relatively flat revenue until we get a better handle on things going into 2021. So I know it's a ton of information. Probably for anyone watching from the public, they're probably thoroughly confused right now, but they don't have the documents, the budget, which is a public record. So anyone who would like a copy of it at any time can ask anyone here at City Hall or a council member for a copy of the budget. We can provide that to you. But it's a lot of information to digest. I appreciate all of you on council taking the time beforehand to look through things so that you could bring your questions this evening. In the past, I know these meetings have lasted for 4+ hours, and right now we're not even up to the 2-hour mark, which has been great. But I'm happy, and so are the department heads, I'm sure, to answer any questions that may have popped up in your mind as we've kind of gone through all of this, or if you need just a few minutes to collect your thoughts, that's fine as well. Mr. President, I'm going to bring in Brandon Berner. He has his hand back up. I don't know if maybe we forgot something or if he wanted to add something. So I'm going to bring him back in.
Go ahead.
Everybody thinks if they have
Go ahead.
questions. Go ahead, Brandon. You should be in here.
Yep, I just got it. I just wanted to note I did have my sewer section. It always gets kind of lumped in there with WPCC, but I did have another set of lines there after the WPCC.
Yeah, that was his sewer side of things that council members, when I explained to you that half of Brandon's department is sewer, half of public works is street. That's what he's referring to there is the other half of his department on the sewer side. It's lumped in there. You'll see it just after the water pollution control center lines where it says sewer maintenance.
Page 49.
Are there any additional questions or comments, Councilman Leopard?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It was really nice to see when I was reviewing the budget that the hope that we have a swimming pool operational this year, the hope that we have having our seasonal workers back, and that was really a bright spot just to be able to see that along with fireworks, and I just it was good to see, and I certainly hope that we're able to use our swimming pool this year, and the kids can be active in our parks. I just like to thank the mayor, the finance director, and all the department heads, along with our city administrator and law director, and Kathy, for all the hard work that went into these documents. It's if you could add the total hours that the administration put into this document, it's probably unbelievable to us. You know, we spend several hours reviewing it prior to passage, and we get back into it for maybe a couple hours during the year. But the amount of work that has been put into this document is just amazing. And thank you for all your hard work for that.
Thank you for your kind words, Councilman Leopard. I do appreciate it because I know how much time that myself, Dale, and Kathy spend on this. And I also know with how prepared our department heads are when we come together for our meetings with each department. And there's usually several meetings. Seldom do we get away with just one meeting with each single department to go over this. I know they put a lot of time and effort into it. Every year they seem to get more fine-tuned on cost, more accurate. It does. I tell everyone that really the city, September and October and the start of November, really to us is almost like what retail is with their Christmas season. That's what it is for us. It's our crazy busy time from September, October, and the beginning of November, because it's just nonstop with budget items and getting quotes for this and that. And I can't begin to imagine how much overall time with the administration, the department heads, is spent on budget items every year. But when you have a document that just your expenses are 60 pages and then your revenues another 20 or whatever, you're 80 to 100 pages of items, and that's only the overall cost of each line. You figure that each person with their own budget, each line on this page represents all kinds of other expenses that they have broken down at a much more detailed level. There are just countless hours that are spent on this, but every year we get better and better with it. And I can't thank the department heads enough and their staff, because I know their staff, their officers, et cetera, assist with a lot of the work that goes into it. So it's an overall team effort, and I can't thank them enough and appreciate it enough. I'm going to turn it back over to you, Council President, since I'm done with the presentation part. So
okay,
you handle.
Thank you, Councilman Jones.
Thank you, President Fote. And the mayor, just before we get off the budget, and you mentioned about personal budgets, and I do our personal budget here on Sandusky Street. But when I do our budget, I balance the income and the expenses, so it's dollar for dollar. And I'm not used to working with $45, $50 million budgets, but the income expense section of the totals, they don't come out dollar for dollar. And I submitted that question earlier. I got a clear and concise answer. I wish the public could hear the same response.
Sure. So the overall, the proposed 2021 budget to City Council is indeed balanced. However, you've got, I guess the way that you talk about like a personal budget, it is very similar, that if you break things down into every single expense category and you had revenue going into those different categories, you may have certain categories that you're spending more than you're bringing into that category. But our overall city budget is balanced. So our expenses are not exceeding our revenues overall. It just depends on which specific fund, which specific line item you're looking at. But we are proposing a balanced budget to City Council that is not in the negative, and it will get us to where we need to be. And if anything, if you see, we are able to restore many of the areas that we cut back on. So if anything, the public should notice an increase in the level of service and how good the community looks all around next year, while still having a balanced budget into 2021.
Anyone else have any comments? Or Dale?
The thing I was struck by this year, and perhaps it's because this is my fourth or fifth time through the budget, was, as I was looking at the expense side of every budget, the various local businesses that money goes to. I was thinking just in terms of City Hall, what we spend at Great Lakes Ace Hardware, and what we spend at Lowe's, and what we spend at all of the local businesses around town, fire and safety protective services. A lot of the expenses in our budget are going right back into the local economy and help to support our local businesses. And my biggest takeaway from the budget is how good I feel about what we're able to do to support local business through things that we need to buy and we can buy locally. So for me this year, it was nice, now that I've been here long enough, that I know all of these vendors we're using locally to buy so much of the things that the city uses. And that's just a good feeling. And hopefully by next year, I'll be able to quantify just how much that is that actually goes back to the local business economy. I don't have that breakdown for you, but I know that it's a pretty significant portion of our expense base in terms of supplies and materials.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman Leopard.
Thank you, Mr. President. And since each one of us have already received our packets, we don't need to waste another 736 copies to have the budget put along with the ordinance. So 736 pages.
Good point. Not enough, baby. Anybody else? I have a couple of closing comments. I think that this has been, obviously, it's been an unusual year. I really want to commend the city administration, the mayor, the law director, city administrator, finance director, all the department heads. There are a lot of changes that we had to do on the run this year. There were cutbacks that had to be made. Those things were done. We lived within our means. It wasn't always easy, but I commend all of you for the effort, the hard work, for the talent that you all have, and for your leadership. There's a lot of good things that are happening right now. If we can just look for them, a lot of blessings out there. We've got new businesses, new jobs that are moving into our community. That's a plus. The unemployment rate is down to what, 4.3%, Mayor? Is that right?
Correct. That's the lowest rate of the year.
That's awesome. There's just a lot of, you look at the budget, we didn't get, I was optimistic just looking at the numbers that we've seen come in the last several months. It could have been a whole lot worse. It shows the strength of our local economy. It shows the hard work that goes into everyday life in this community, and the great businesses, the great people that we have. I'd also like to just remind everybody at this time of year, our retailers really, really, really need our help. So shop local, buy local. Let's help them through this difficult period because they're really, really struggling. So it's been a difficult year. We've learned some things. We've stuck together, and I'm very, very optimistic as we move ahead what we're going to accomplish together. So I want to thank all of you. Does anybody else have any comments before we close? Okay, Mayor.
Yes. Did we decide when we're going to have the third and final reading of this?
No.
I don't know what council's schedule is if the 28th of December is bad. Because
28th of December?
Yeah, because right now as it stands, we only have 2 meetings in December, and this obviously requires 3 readings. I've never been a big fan of suspending the 3 reading rule to pass the budget, since it is literally the biggest and most important thing we typically do every year. But that's council's prerogative at the end of the day. But we will need to have, unless council is willing to suspend and pass the budget after 2 readings, we will need a meeting sometime in December to pass this before the end of the year.
How would you all feel about suspending it? 2 readings, so we'd pass it on the 21st. Councilman Perry?
Is this not considered the first reading then?
No. There's no ordinance been prepared yet.
I personally, I feel like, going through it tonight would be, in my head, kind of like the first reading. And then if we went through it 2 more times, I think that would give everybody enough time to at least review it enough to vote on it by December, our second meeting in December. So I would be fine suspending it, but that's just me.
Okay, anybody else? Councilman Gillig?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would kind of need to echo what the mayor believes. Totally get where Councilman Perry's coming from, but I don't know if the budget should be suspended. If we're going to be able to meet over Zoom, it should be relatively quick. December 28th would work just fine for me, if at all possible.
Okay. Show of hands, December, Councilman Jones.
I'm just going to reiterate, December 28th, Monday's fine with myself also.
Okay. Councilwoman Yantuno?
I don't have a problem with it either way, and the 28th would work for me.
Okay, Councilwoman Boyle?
Perfect.
Okay. Councilman Leopard? Okay. Councilman Schaaf? Okay. All right. I'd like to call a special meeting for December 28th at what time? 6:30? 6:30 for the purpose of reviewing and passing the 2021 Tiffin City budget and anything else that would come before the council. Okay. Anything else, Law Director? Okay. Anything else from anybody for the good of the order? Well, I want to thank all of you for your time, your patience, for all of your hard work. And we stand adjourned, and God bless all of you. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.